Well, when you peel back the layers of this whole world that we happen to be born into about nuclear energy and nuclear technology, what else do you find? Well, you find a massive number of nuclear warheads, missiles, and other armaments around the world. You hear about attacks that we're about to attack countries such as Iran for their nuclear program, which some say is for missiles, they say it's not. But you know what? There should be no nuclear programs. There should be no, what do they have to do? In order to get the fuel, they have to condense all the nuclear material into really condensed forms. They have to purify it. That should be illegal. We should not purify this stuff. And if you're purifying for anything, that should be off the map. What is this over here? This is a big cover story. These plants are not worth anything that's ever spent on them, and yet they are a cover story for our nuclear crimes in this world. $14 trillion. Including the crimes that we committed against Japan. This country committed those crimes dropping bombs on Japan, which never should have happened. Picking up on that thought, I have now Dave Patterson from Veterans for Peace to come on up. Dave, come on up here and say a few words.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. There are many ways to define war and peace, but I can tell you, peace is not the disruption of lives. And if something happens here, even a minor incident, not nearly as bad as Fukushima, we're talking about the disruption of life. That is the opposite of peace. Wait for the train. That's kind of a boring ride, so they're getting a thrill. So it's important for us to remember that peace is preventing this reactor from running. Yes. It's important for us to make sure it doesn't start. Over here, we have maybe the 1 in 200 of the top toxic waste sites in the country. We have 30 to 40,000 tons of spent fuel. If something happens and there's a disruption to the cooling of that spent fuel, it's all over. It's guaranteed all over for within 10 miles, and within 50 miles we're talking about the disruption of more than 8 million people's lives. That is not peace. The other thing I'd like to make very clear is that this, as we all know, is a profit-making endeavor. These people, every day that this plant runs, they produce toxic waste that can be toxic for tens of thousands of years. They are willing to do that to make a few bucks. What does that say about Sempra Energy? It says that they're willing to put our lives at risk just to make a few bucks. So this is their chink in their armor. This is the chink. We need to go, because they're publicly traded, we need to go to all the mutual fund managers, we need to go to the stock markets, we need to go to the people that assess the risk for stocks, and start looking at Sempra Energy, start looking at California Edison, and get them to seriously think about what's going to happen if we have an accident here. Is that stock going to be worth anything? Hell no. And if the risk is assessed high enough and we keep it up, the stockholders will flee, and they have no choice but to shut it down. Let's go after them with something they understand, the value of stock. Let's put them out of business if they won't shut this plant down. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks very much, Dave. Torg and Johnson, we'll work your way up. Indeed, this is the start of keeping this down. It's possible. We can make this shut down. Now, you may not be able to do it through other ways because the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is all paid off. They are not going to do anything to shut these down because they're in the pocket of these big companies. But a turnout like this or even more, we can make it happen. Welcome Torgen Johnson. Come on up. Torgen is knowledgeable about this, and I'll let him explain what his story is.
Hi, my name is Torgen Johnson. I'm from Solana Beach, about 30 miles south of here. My background is planning. I hold 2 graduate degrees from Harvard in planning-related fields. I'm also trained as an architect at USC. And I'm here right now to speak as a concerned father of 3 young children. And the reason I got involved in this issue was in early April of 2011, I had been watching TV for several days and saw no reports about any of the fallout that was heading towards the western United States from the disaster in Japan on any channel, nothing on the internet. And that was very suspicious to me because I had known from living in the Caribbean that we have these things called tequila sunrises where the Sahara Desert sand gets lifted up off the surface of the desert by natural forces and carried across the Atlantic in just a matter of days, and it descends on the Caribbean islands like rain. And the sand is so thick, it's heavy grains of sand cover everything. Your car, you have to wash your car before you can drive it. The sand is so thick. So when the reports started coming out that nothing was going to come over this way, nothing was going to travel this far, I knew it was BS. And so I was very upset and decided to buy a Geiger counter and just be prepared for the plume. Well, what I did to test the Geiger counter is I went into my refrigerator and I pulled out the gallon of organic milk that I had from a local supermarket and just tested it. It was half empty because I've been feeding it to my children. Actually, several gallons have been fed to my children, and it had detectable radiation in it. And that had traveled 5,500 miles in a matter of days. If any of you drank milk since April of 2011, you've all ingested some of this. And we were never told about that. So what I'm going to share with you just briefly is some of the things that I've learned in this last year of research and talking with people from Russia to one of the top theoretical physicists down in San Diego. We've debated this issue, and actually 2 days ago at lunch he told me, Torgen, after hearing about your arguments and you sending me emails and we having these lunches and discussions, I'm 100% behind you. But I just want to say that USGS, that's a U.S. Geographical Survey, says we're due for a mega quake here in Southern California. It's going to start on the South San Andreas. It's going to rupture northwards, starting around the Salton Sea and rupture up through Santa Barbara. The largest earthquake preparedness plan in world history was last year in preparation for this quake. It was called the Great Shakeout. Now, there was nothing in the Great Shakeout that addressed the issue of this power plant behind us. So the Interjurisdictional Planning Committee, which is part of the nuclear industry, which supposedly organizes all the emergency response for this area right here. If you see yourself in this map anywhere, that's a 50-mile radius, the outer circle. If your city is in that 50-mile radius, you're in trouble because there's no viable evacuation plan for you. If you fall between this circle and this circle, you're not even in the planning zone. There's $12 billion available should we experience a nuclear disaster here. I just did a rough calculation of the land here, just estimating, just roughly, what the value of land and improvements would be, all the infrastructure, the freeways, the universities, the hospitals, the homes, the agricultural fields, and I came up with a rough order of magnitude number of $1 trillion. There's $12 billion available, if they even release it. Look what's happening in Japan. So I want to say that I was really disgusted when I heard at 2 Nuclear Regulatory Commission hearings here in San Clemente that the NRC and Southern California Edison couch the problem of nuclear safety in technical terms. This is not a technical issue. This is a moral issue. And what we need to do is stop being baffled by the technical aspects of this plant and the problems it's facing and look at it holistically, because they never spoke about the impacts of what happens outside the plant when there's a disaster. They only spoke about how they operate the plant, how they turn the knobs the right way, the valves have been replaced, and everything was safe. They told us this less than a year ago. Now both reactors are shut down, and apparently there's been a radioactive leak. I want to say that our gracious Japanese guests took their Geiger counters this morning in the parking lot over here, where we walked from, and they said the radiation readings that they were finding were higher than what's legal in Japan. There's also a friend here, and she has a house near D Street. And the radiation readings from inside of her house at D Street were higher than the radiation readings in the house of our Japanese guest in Miyagi Prefecture. So that says that we've got leaks here that we're not even aware of. And I don't know if you know this, but we have no radiation monitoring within 50 miles of San Onofre where the readings are available to the public. The nuclear industry controls the monitoring of radiation that's released here on a regular basis legally. The NRC allows all nuclear power plants to release tritium and other radioactive elements into our environment without telling us.
Wow.
And it could be daily. So we need to have monitoring. We need to know what's coming out of these power plants. This particular power plant behind us produces only 7% of California's energy. And yet it risks up to $1 trillion worth of land and improvements. And it's not just the monetary impacts, it's all of our lives. Because what we're learning from Japan is that when we are hit by a radioactive plume, we don't return to that land. It's off limits for generations. And if you can imagine, you hear the sirens go off, you've got a few hours to gather everything, and then you got to jump into gridlock, roll your windows up, and pray. There's no viable evacuation plan here. They planned for 10 miles out, but outside of that, you're on your own, they said. Up to 3 weeks is what the IPC told us. You're on your own. So they're going to operate this plant for a profit. They're going to plan for 10 miles out. They've got a sketchy plan for the 10 miles, and all the rest of us, 8.4 million of us, were on our own. Well, if you remember September 8th, when the plant went dark at about 3:30 or 3:45 in the afternoon, everything shut off, the street lights, the pumps at the gas stations went dead. People were getting stalled on the street because they ran out of gas. They couldn't get gas. It was mayhem, and that was just the plant going down under normal conditions. What I also learned is that my cell phone eventually went dead. My computer went dead. My television was dead. So all I had was the radio in my car. That was my source of information. And they didn't know what was going on. Did anybody get any kind of acceptable explanation for what was going on when that was happening? That could have been a full-blown disaster. And we were all left in the dark. Well, I want to say in closing that we stand in solidarity with our Japanese friends and all the people in Japan who are dealing with this ongoing disaster right now in Fukushima. Everything that I'm learning right now is that situation is out of control. It isn't under control. They don't have cold shutdown like they claim. And there's actually a problem right now, I understand, with the potential for a hydrovolcanic explosion, I believe under reactor number 3. And reactor number 4 is leaning dangerously, and it has a full spent fuel pool up on top of the reactor. So we're being misfed information, and what we need to do, all of us, is we need to share information that we have. We need to talk to our friends. We need to go to our city councils and demand that we hold open public discussions about the safety of this power plant and make this a public issue, not a private issue that's decided behind closed doors and decided by an NRC whose commissioners are all in a revolving door arrangement with the nuclear industry. All those commissioners, except one that I understand, the chairman, all of them were vetted by the nuclear industry. So we really don't have any regulation. It's an unregulated industry that's endangering 8.4 million lives, keeping us in the dark, and it's all for a little bit of profit. This is immoral, and we need to stand up. And thank you for all of you for coming out here to stand in solidarity with our Japanese friends. For the news media that's here, I urge you to carry this whole story, and I urge you to send the message out to Southern California that we're in trouble. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Torgan. That was a great talk. You know, this is a good point of view here. Going to the city councils, going to these various meetings, and sitting there and occupying those meetings. You know what? There isn't enough people in those rooms. These rooms are usually vacant. They're unoccupied. And if anything can happen with the Occupy movement, it is to occupy public meetings. We have to get in there. Before we get on to our next speaker, which will be Gary Hedrick, so work your way up here, Gary. I'd like to suggest that everybody reach into their back pocket and pull out their wallet and maybe some money. Some people are going to be walking around to take donations. We do need to raise some money at the event here, so be generous. The people in the red vest will have little pillowcases. We do have to cover the cost of getting our guests from Japan flown here. So it did cost us some money that we would like to see covered from this group here. And also to help us with our printing costs and other costs that we did incur to have this event happen. And to prepare us for future events, I will say that there is one potentially on tap, which is April 28th, maybe back here. It is the anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster. So we could perhaps do it again. We have all the infrastructure figured out, this little stage thing which I built, and my little wheel here and batteries and stuff. And so we can come back very easily and do it again and put continued pressure on these guys.
What about March 28th?
No. That's
For 3 Mile Island?
Can't do it that fast. There's only so much energy in this body. Yeah, no more. Okay, there's been a $200 donation. I see back there a hand went up, $1,500. I'm just kidding. But, $200 is pretty good, so let's just see if somebody can top that. Who can raise their hand right now that will top $200?
That was for our video. We were selling a video that was made right after the Fukushima event by No Nukes Action. We had those videos for sale back there on a donation basis, and someone did $200. So we thank you for that, whoever it was. There's more videos.
Okay, so I didn't see the hand go up yet to beat the 200, but I think look for that red vest. You don't have to make yourself important, but we'll still take it even. What's that?
They want to make a check.
Yeah, checks. We'll cash those checks just as well.
To who?
Oh, make it out to the Peace Resource Center. That's a good place to send it to. And we'll work out all the details later so that everybody gets hopefully evened up at the end. Let's move along with our next speaker. We got to try to make it. I don't want to stay here any more than necessary, if you know what I mean. So let's welcome Gary Hedrick, which is from the San Clemente area, an activist up there. Gary Hedrick, give him a hand.
Well, so nice to see all of you out here, and we all have different parts of the story to tell, but that's the magic of it, is we all have to latch on to something we know is true and run with it, share it with other people, and that's how I got involved, because my wife Lori and I started a group called San Clemente Green, and all we really wanted to do was create a sustainability action plan, which is seems so unambitious compared to what we're doing now. It's almost embarrassing to think that's where our focus was, but that's how we got involved, and we weren't necessarily anti-nuclear. We were aware of things and we had concerns, but we've never led an organization or anything like that. We're just ordinary folks, and the thing that happened, we attended a Nuclear Regulatory Commission meeting, and one of the speakers was someone that worked at the power plant, and they had the guts to stand up there in public and criticize the NRC and SCE in public. And I just amazed. I never heard anything like that in one of these public meetings. So I write an article every month for local papers, and my following article is about these guys that stood up and challenged the system. I was so proud, and I thought they get the bad name for some reason. You know, I think they're heroes. They risk their reputation, their friends, their careers, just to do what's right. And so I wrote the article, and next thing you know, I'm getting contacted by other whistleblowers at San Onofre. And it happens to be that the first person who contacted us said they're in the process of replacing generators at the power plant, and they're behind schedule, and the costs are overreaching, and he's concerned because he hears talk about skipping important testing. He called it hot functional testing. And he's a nuclear licensed operator. And so I trust him. I think he knows what he's talking about. But everyone I went to with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, they said, oh, thanks for reporting that. We'll look into it. And 6 months later, I hear that there's nothing to worry about. Well, it turns out all the race to get those generators done and cutting corners and not doing all the proper testing, we still don't know exactly why we're having those problems now, but even if it's not hot functional testing in particular, the fact that these two new generators that we spent $680 million of taxpayer money on are not functioning well, and it's likely to do with something that someone told me about 2 years ago. And we just have to start listening to people like this, and we have to find truth. And I have first-hand experience with 6 other whistleblowers since then that have told me things that it's an honor and a privilege that I'm able to share that with you, because I'm just one of you, and that is the truth. It's like first-hand information, and that's a rare find in this industry. So believe me that things are not running properly. They're being profit over safety, and I won't take much more of your time with the stories I have. It's just appalling the things that are going on in the name of profit, and we're going to do everything we can do to stop it. And the only thing we really know is to make the public more aware. So that's all we can do. And I know other people are doing things behind the scenes with the politics and legal structures and things. Here's Vanna White. This is what we're looking at. Here's our safety record compared to all the units in the United States. We win the prize. We're way up here. We're the worst safety record in the United States. And you think if we could at least prioritize shutting down, let's start here, shut this one down, keep it shut down no matter what. Let's have our voices read. I've been suggested another little topic here. Just quickly, Gene was reminding me that the workers at the power plant are on our side too. There's a lot of people inside just hoping we're successful, because they're in that terrible situation of having to finish off their careers, and if they stand up, they lose everything. But it's nice to know that people inside that have shut it down now have a lot of similar concerns to us, just like we have concerns about them. We don't want them to be without jobs or anything. It takes a long time to decommission a plant, and we want them to get the retraining, and we want to invest in their future. We're in this together, but we can't let the corporate honchos call the shot. It's got to be from the people, and that's us. We've got to do that.
Grand Clemente Green, right, is the organization. Thank you. So, local issues, you know, this whole area will be decimated if this plant goes under, and it's about to. Now, I want to we'll get into that in a second. If you haven't, before you leave, make sure you sign up on these sheets up here, because if this plant, if they have any hint that they're going to actually restart it, we want to have some sort of an immediate response. So we want to have you guys on the hook to hopefully be able to come back and respond and say, no, you're not gonna restart it. Right now they're in a mode of researching. They actually proposed some sort of a new analysis to discover that this is they're gonna make it sound like it's okay to continue to have this here and that it's safe even with the earthquakes. They're going to spend millions of dollars to do a study, and all that study is going to do is to say it's with shaking of this size and so forth, it's okay. The reality is we don't know how bad the shaking can be. It can be way worse than the 9.0 that we've had so far and just shake this thing to pieces. They don't know. Look at the World Trade Center towers that had concrete. It was obliterated. If you shake this thing enough, all that containment building will turn to dust. And this whole coast, these beautiful beaches, this surfing area will be eliminated. So I'd like to introduce now Corey Shoemaker, a #1 surfer who has surfed here and knows how bad this would be if this is eliminated. Corey, come on up. Give her a hand.
Hi guys, thanks for allowing me to come speak today. My name is Corey Schumacher, and I'm a 3-time world longboard surfing champion. And 2-time North American surfing champion in longboarding. I've been surfing in the Southern California waters for about 30 years, and both my parents surf. And they've spent about 50 years in the waters here in Southern California. And surfers, we tend to be like seasonal migratory creatures. We surf, my family specifically, we surf Encinitas area in the winter. And then in the summer times, we spent all of our time here. So many, many days of my childhood were spent on the beaches in San Onofre. We spent time as kids playing on the beaches, in the waters, and in the bursts of bamboo that are down there. If you've ever had a chance to go down there, it's a really beautiful beach, and they've kept it pristine. There's no paving down there. We used to pretend that there were fairy groves in the bamboo, so we had a little imagination going there. At low tide, we used to stalk sea slugs that littered the rocks, and octopi and little sea creatures. We didn't really think too much of these two domes over here. They've never really impacted our consciousness at all, even when there were a couple times where there was earthquakes that we experienced, where the cars were bouncing everywhere and the sand was shifting. It wasn't until much later that I realized that we were potentially surfing in a very toxic environment, and that there were possible leaks and radioactivity, and this is definitely something that has reached my consciousness and has stayed very, very close to my heart. As a surfer, I've learned things from the ocean. One of the things was how interconnected the world is. When something happens across the ocean, whether it's a swell to bring waves that we ride, or a tsunami that increases the tidal flow. Surfers are very aware that we're an interconnected planet, that the land masses are connected by an ocean, and the vast majority of the world is ocean. I learned that creatures of the sea are more brethren at times than land dwellers, and that the stories of pods of dolphins rescuing whales and rallying around humans to deflect shark attacks, that these are some things that land dwellers don't necessarily think about. One of the things that ends up happening in the oceans is that we, as surfers, suffer the consequences of progress. We're canaries in the coal mine, so to speak. All the pollution that happens on streets ends up in our playground, and also any of the radioactivity that ends up blossoming and falling ends up in the oceans. So we surf the runoff of progress and the waste of our nation. And that's, when I think of the numbers that get thrown around and the cost-benefit analysis models that get thrown around, I see people, I don't see economics, I don't see numbers. And that's something that I hope changes. The person in my family who surfed the most was my mom. She would send us off to school, and for about 8 hours a day, she'd come down here in the summertime and surf marathon sessions over and over and over again, day after day. It's quite an impressive feat, and she's been doing it for most of her life, most of the 50 years that she's surfed. And it was 2 years ago, when she was 57 years old, that she was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And it's a condition that isn't in her family at all, and makes me wonder how the time that she's spent here has impacted that diagnosis. Consequently, also, another person in my family who's had to sort of deal with the runoff of progress, so to speak, is my cousin, who is one of those urban myths. He almost lost his eye and had to have part of his skull cut out because of a staph infection that he caught after a rainstorm, after he surfed after a rainstorm. So they say these things are urban myths, but in families that have the frequency of exposure that we have, which is daily surfing, if not twice a day, pretty much for our entire lives, it's not urban myth, it actually happens. And there's many more stories like this that I have around people who have spent a lot of time in the ocean. So seeing this shut down would be a great source of it would be a great source of safety, and for the future families that are going to enjoy San Onofre State Beach, and I really hope that that happens. The other thing that I need that I'd like to bring up is the fact that each one of us and our energy consumption is responsible for cutting down our consumption of energy. We need to be responsible for how much we're consuming, and all of the microwaves and radio, everything that we use, that's on us. So while I also agree that we need to change policy and we need more regulation, it really is important that we as human beings, each of us individually, cuts back where we can, as much as we can, because progress doesn't necessarily equal happiness, and it certainly affects our land-dwelling brethren and our sea-playing brethren as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corey, for that. And yeah, that would be a catastrophe not to have these beaches and the surf to surf on. Energy use, we got to make changes, folks. We got to make this turn. And it is really hard to get that through the profiteers. We're going to have to put the pressure on both through actions like this and also politically. We'd like to acknowledge all those people that are working through the political system to get something to happen. We're going to have a few speakers come forward here that are either candidates or in the political system. By no means are we endorsing any of the candidates, but we do want to respect those people that are here and are actually making a statement along the lines of getting this plant to shut down. First, I want to bring up Patty. Okay, Patty Davis is going to give you a quick thing about the California Nuclear Initiative.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey guys, we have a tool that we can use to shut down these reactors. It is the California Nuclear Initiative. If you have not signed, we've got some fantastic volunteers right out here at these tables as you're coming in. They'll ask you if you're a registered voter. If you're not a registered voter, we can even help you register today. We want you to sign the California Nuclear Initiative. It's very simple. We also, if you want to help us circulate this petition, you can do that, because you, with the power of your pen and a piece of paper and a petition, you can shut down these reactors. Some fantastic volunteers going to locations doing a simple demonstration. They say, help us shut down reactors. We show them the safety chart. You just saw this a minute ago. Gary showed this to you. And we talked to them about the harassment and the retaliation against workers who are trying to report the safety issues. And then we tell them the most important part. We don't even need this nuclear reactor running to meet our energy needs in California. We have a surplus of energy. We produce more than we need. You can shut these reactors down, you can shut down Diablo Canyon, and you can still have the energy you need. And heaven forbid we get rooftop solar. Heaven forbid we ever get some rooftop solar here. Rooftop solar!
Already own it. Already own
So
it.
before you go, make sure you check in with our table. We can also help you sign up to circulate the petition yourself for the California Nuclear Initiative. We want to get it on the ballot in November. We want the voters to have a choice. Let's give the voters a choice. Let's empower the voters with a choice to shut down these reactors. Thank you.
Okay, and next I'd like to introduce a candidate for President of the United States. Okay, and given what we've seen as candidates, this guy may have a good chance. Come on up here, Kent Nesbitt from the Green Party. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. It's great to see so many people here from the environmental and the peace and justice movements. Please do sign up and spread the word that we really don't need these plants. Not only do we have a surplus of energy, but really the biggest bang for the buck when it comes to energy use is to improve energy efficiency. I'm also a shelter manager, an emergency shelter manager for the County of San Diego. During the last firestorm, I was called to help manage the shelter at Del Mar. I can tell you this, when the big earthquake hits, and it's only a matter of time, there is no plan in this area. There is no evacuation strategy. Over 8 million people will be negatively affected. This, folks, is an accident that is waiting to happen. You really need to spread the word. Sign up with these organizations. Don't believe the lie that we need nuclear power. We need to phase out all nuclear power and weapons. It's a phrase, folks. Yes. Nuclear power and weapons. Yes. Thank you. Again, my name is Dr. Kent Nesbitt. I'm with the Green Party. I'm one of the few candidates with Native American ancestry. I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this for public health and safety. My last name is Mesplay. You can check me out at mesplay.org. This is a non-political event. I'm only involved because I see that too many people are apathetic. Again, we really don't need these plants. If we improve energy efficiency, if we improve our public transportation efficiency, if we rely on rooftop solar, if we rely on all of the alternatives that we have at our disposal, we can put an end to nuclear power plants. We can do that right now. We can see that these beasts behind me are never again turned on. They are a hazard, folks. The tsunami wall is 1/10 as high as it needs to be, using reasonable modeling and arguments. The sea wall out there is insignificant. That alone is a sad joke. So it's good to be here. Mother Nature has certainly put on her finest, and we don't want anything bad to happen. But just by improving energy efficiency alone, we really can make up for the 7% or so of energy that California gets from these things behind it. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you.
That's Kent Nesbitt. Again, I see Charlie Imes is leaving. Let's give him a hand for his serenade. Always been there when you need to help out in progressive events. Again, the people in the red vests that have the pillowcases, be generous in your contributions so that we can try to make it even. Make sure you sign up on the petitions up here so that we get your name and address for future actions. And now, I'd like to introduce a candidate for this congressional district that is currently held by Daryl Issa. And I'd like to introduce now Jerry Tettleman. Come on up.
Hey, Jerry! Go, Jerry!
You know, when one person stands up and speaks out for a particular issue, other people stand up. And now we're a small group here. We're not a large group, but this is going out to the media. There are people watching this event. There's people, I saw people here from Japan actually recording to take this information back to Japan. So it's not just a small group here. We're reaching out to a lot of people. Now, my name is Jerry Tettleman, and I'm running for Congress. In the district that I'm running in, San Onofre is right in the middle of the district. It starts in Del Mar in the south, and it runs up to Dana Point. So this is a very important issue that we begin phasing out nuclear power and phasing in solar power, renewable energy, wind power. But it takes political will, and it takes us to translate the action that we're doing here today. We have to translate this into changes in law, changes in the Congress. Vicki was talking earlier, Patty was talking earlier, there's a petition to sign that you can put on the ballot, that's going on the ballot for removing nuclear energy from California. Now, it's possible to do that, but it has to be done at a national level. They can override that. It doesn't automatically change the law. But it takes the political will. It takes people that are going to speak up and put themselves on the line and say, you know, when you look at nuclear power, it's just not worth the risk. It's not a safe form of power. It's really the bottom line is safety. Everything in life you look at, it's a choice, and it's the benefits to the risk. In this case, the risk of nuclear power far outweighs the benefit. We're really just producing electricity, and you can produce electricity in a lot safer ways. You don't have to have an evacuation plan. You don't have to have iodine pills. You don't have to have hazmat suits. If you have a solar energy or you have even natural gas, you have those things. You don't need that kind of protection. So for us in this modern age, to take this risk, which we've seen what happened in Fukushima, we understand that this plant back here is vulnerable to earthquakes, it's vulnerable after 9/11 to terrorism, it's vulnerable to human error. There's a host of things that can happen to this plant. It's not worth the risk of losing an area. The area around Fukushima, there's a 12-mile radius around there. It's a dead zone. We don't need a dead zone in here for thousands of years. It's just not worth the risk. Thank you. My name is Jared Tettleman. I'm running for Congress in the 49th District.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple of quick comments before our next speaker. Get your airprogressive.org bumper stickers over here, put them on your car, and start advertising for this streaming radio station and listen in. T-shirt, stand up now. San Onofre or Fukushima T-shirt with the screaming radiation symbol. Those are sold out now, I understand, but will be available. Just sign up for them. Okay, we heard from Jerry Tettleman, and again, running against Daryl Issa is another good progressive candidate, Dick Iden. Come on up, Dick, and say a few words.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who put this important demonstration together, and thank you all for staying so long out in the hot sun. I'm also running for Congress in this 49th Congressional District against Daryl Issa. I'm here because I think the nuclear power industry is a microcosm of what's wrong with America. For the past 100 years, economic growth has been the sole measure of health of our society, and unbridled wealth has been the measure of liberty. Greed is good in this short-term profit, dog-eat-dog economy, which has become dependent on things that are bad for us and bad for the rest of the world. Things like weapons of war, cars and fossil fuels, nuclear power, soft drinks, snack foods, fast foods, things that are bad for us, but things that are important to our economy, because that's the way our economy has been built. Our country is operated on the old adage, often attributed to Calvin Coolidge, what's good for America, what's good for business is good for America. And with nuclear power and songs in particular, we can see how wrong this is. I'm not against business, generally, or Edison International, which owns this plant, or Southern California Edison, which operates this plant. I'm just against irresponsible businesses, and worse. And worse, I'm against businesses who are corrupt and monopolistic and lying businesses that cheat, cut corners, and endanger the public by their very operations.
Yeah.
And there's so many examples of this kind of business operating, so many examples from Bhopal to, don't get me started, so many examples of businesses gone wrong and hurting the public. And there's so many examples of lying. Speaking of lying, one of our guests from Japan made the point about how they always say there's no problem. I always get a sick laugh when I hear a new power plant spokesman after an incident say, there was never any danger to the public. I was a lawyer and I call that boilerplate, what they stick in the press release every single time, no matter what. Even as they're calling their families and packing their cars, the spokesman will be saying there was never any danger to the public. Business in the U.S. is a profit-driven, dog-eat-dog enterprise, and it needs to be regulated. There's so many shortcuts in any business, but especially these complex and inherently dangerous businesses. Business needs to be regulated, but it needs to tends to own and control the government at all levels, including the very agencies that are supposed to be regulating them. The corruption and the ineptitude of the Atomic Energy Commission and now the NRC are legendary. And even honest, well-intentioned city council members like those in San Clemente must be under great pressure from an economic powerhouse and major employer like Songs. Nobody wants to hurt the economy, even if it's bad for us. So I'm Dick Iden, and I'm here today because the system needs big changes. And shutting down Songs is a good place to start.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
What do we want? Shut down this plant. When do we want it? Now. What do we want?
Shut down this plant.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Shut down this plant.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Shut down this plant.
When do we want it?
Now.
Thank you. Now, we're going to be closing. I want to thank you personally for everyone coming. I didn't get to do my speech, but actually I got to talk a lot. But in essence, let's stay on this. We need to keep the focus on this because I'll tell you, this event has brought it up to the surface, and then we need to keep pushing on it so that this plant does not reopen. Thank you again to the organizers. I want to thank again the parks. Let's give them a hand, the park people, the sheriff's department, and law enforcement. All the organizers and people that help, the sign makers, banner makers. And now I'm going to turn it over to Gene Stone for a closing. After this, the people on the buses must immediately start walking back to the buses so we can take you out of this area.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'd like to offer this sacred water to the earth for its purification. And thank all of you for coming.
Hey, Mel.
But I want to know who here will speak for the earth. Who will speak for the earth?
We will.
Who will speak for the children?
We will.
Who will speak for the animals?
We will.
I ask you to go forth from this event today and create your own. Create networks. Start working together. The corporate mafia that's killing the world with over 88,000 toxic chemicals are creating new ones every day. One of the most toxic ones and the most long-lasting ones is right behind us. 500 pounds a day. It's time to speak for the earth and our children and work for the good of all of us instead of the greed of the corporate bastards who put profit before your safety. Thank you.
Okay, again, those people on buses must immediately depart, march out to the buses and get on board so we can take you out of this radiation zone. Everyone else, you're welcome to stay and soak up the radiation as long as you'd like.
Well, we only live 2 miles from here.
Yeah, I surf out here every day.
Yeah, Sano surfer.
Sign up here, get your bumper stickers and cards about airprogressive.org. Listen in.